So the video you're about to watch was a segment from my latest podcast, The B-Sides of Sports, and it's basically just framework for the Lamar situation and what I think about it, and kind of a little bit of a rant. But regardless, just wanted to give some context before we roll into the clip. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy. Now to kind of go into our last thing, keeping on the trend of quarterbacks, I mean, that's just, what the game is nowadays, but the Lamar Jackson situation. Now, obviously, we kind of all know roughly what's going on, but I'm first going to lay down some foundation and just some things I think about it. So, for starters, I think what makes this so unique compared to a lot of the other quarterback situations that have happened in the past few years is that they placed the non-exclusive franchise tag on him. Now, my senior year of high school, I did a paper where I read countless books about the salary cap and how it works, different types of tags, and it was for my AP English class, so I did tons of research. I read 3 books just about the salary cap. So I have a pretty good idea on how some of this stuff goes. And I will say, what's very interesting about this is the non-exclusive franchise tag doesn't happen often. The last time, famously, it happened was Kirk Cousins. Now, what the non-exclusive franchise tag is it's not as much money as the franchise tag. The franchise tag this year is around $45 million, fully guaranteed, while the non-exclusive tag is $32.4, which is funny because even in not paying Lamar and letting him find money, they're paying him less. It's just kind of an ultimate irony. Like, the Ravens just don't want to pay him for whatever reason, right? And so, but the non-exclusive tag, what makes it unique is he can go out and negotiate with any team. But the issue is once he negotiates with them, they also have to give up 2 first-round picks. Now, this wasn't as much of an issue years and years and years ago when there were still poison pill contracts. Now, what a poison pill contract is teams would put clauses in the deal that a team like the Ravens couldn't match, so they could get Lamar, so then they maybe wouldn't have to pay him so much money, and the team couldn't match, so they could just get the deal on and move. Because now, obviously, the thought is, okay, let's say Lamar's okay with signing for $175 million guaranteed with the Dolphins because he wants to go play there and they actually have weapons. He could do that, but then the Ravens could just match it and bring him back on a deal that he doesn't want. So that's kind of the tricky thing for Lamar, is that he's really just the one getting screwed over more than anyone. And I kind of brought up the concept of a poison pill contract. That was banned in the 2 CBAs ago, collective bargaining agreement, which the NFL Players Union and the NFL owners signed. So you cannot do that anymore. Famously, Steve Hutchinson, the guard, this contract came into play when he was playing for the Vikings, when they placed the tender on him. The Seahawks sent him a deal. Or sorry, vice versa. He was playing for the Vikings. Seahawks put a deal the Vikings couldn't match. They didn't like it, so then they got all mad. And then the collective bargaining agreement are prohibited from doing it now. So he can't get out that way. So that then gives his only out to if a team really wants him. But then that team has to give up 2 first-round picks. So the team has to be set up foundationally enough to the point where they can support a team without 2 of the most valuable draft picks. I think the first and second round and early third are some of the most valuable picks. The top 100 talent in the NFL usually it's a big dip off of that. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, usually don't hear so much about. It's usually those first 3 rounds, I feel like, is that you're getting a guaranteed talent even if they don't work out, right? So you're giving all of that up, and as well as the hundreds of millions, and he wants guarantees, which I think is warranted. But again, I think that's fair for him to want $230 million in guarantees. But the issue is, if the Browns don't offer Deshaun Watson one of the most absurd contracts in NFL history, being 5-year, $230 million guaranteed, they're already struggling with this contract. I'm not sure if you saw this. In the offseason, they've already had to restructure this deal. So for 2024, 25, and 26, they have a $63 million cap hit on Deshaun Watson because an NFL roster is not built to give either fully guaranteed rosters or one that are comparable to non-guaranteed rosters of other top quarterbacks. That's the issue. A guy who hadn't played in a year and a half, coming off a major injury, with 25 active ongoing lawsuits against him. The Browns once again showed their lack of knowledge at quarterback in a way I didn't even think possible by signing a guy to a deal that he arguably didn't deserve. And I think it just shows that the Browns, and I don't want to give them credit. A lot of people are like, maybe they did it to screw over the Ravens. The Browns are not smart enough to do that. I truly believe that. Look at their history at QB. They have so much foundational problems. I can't even begin to start. This was just the Browns being stupid and overpaying a guy to get him. Kind of what I think the Broncos just did with Sean Payton. They were so scared of not having any other alternative that they overpaid the crap out of a guy, traded a bunch of picks for him just because they wanted someone. It's that fear of the quarterback, which is, I wrote my senior AP paper on that because it's such a real phenomenon, and you saw it there, and now Lamar Jackson's getting screwed because of it, and I think that's the dumbest part of it. The NFL Players Union encourages players to chase as much money as possible, and I think that's understandable. But then you see instances like this where Deshaun Watson, where he undeservedly, in my opinion, asked for all of this money, having not played, having been, as what a judge officially ruled in court, exhibiting predatory behavior to multiple individuals. To pay him all of that money sets a bad precedent, because then you have a guy who's already won an MVP, had just as much instability on the team around him as Deshaun Watson did, but I think not nearly as good of weapons. He didn't have DeAndre Hopkins. He didn't have a J.J. Watt on his team. And to do what he did and then not be able to get paid because of what the Browns did, I think that to me is the most tragic part. Because don't get me wrong, Lamar obviously could ask for more money, and I think that'd be fair. But the Ravens' unwillingness to pay him, if I'm Lamar Jackson, I don't want to play there. Which, if they just placed the franchise tag on him, that would be totally fine. He could trade and sign, but they didn't. They placed the tag on him that handcuffed him wrongfully, and I think unethically. And that's, I think, my biggest issue with this, is they did kind of a sleazy, backhanded way. And I know technically the franchise tag is allowed and all these other variations of it, but still, that doesn't change my perspective on how ethical I think they are, as well as just the issue of, like I said, they're really handcuffing him. If he wanted to go to a team and let them pay him less, because, again, they might have weapons for him, they might support him better. He can't do that physically because the Ravens would match it. He would have to go to the Ravens and request that they don't match it. But again, if he only then takes a discount, the Ravens, of course, are going to sign him. They just didn't want to give all of the money he wanted. So even if he goes on a discounted deal or a smaller deal, the Ravens could just match it, and he's screwed. And he has to play for a team that he doesn't want to play for. And unless he wants to sit out and void all the guaranteed money, which is dumb and sucks, I mean, to me, it really just seems like the Ravens did this about as backhanded as they could, and I think it's just very disrespectful the president is sent, as well as, I think, again, maybe just as large of an issue was the Deshaun Watson contract. I mean, you're already seeing the Browns struggle with it, like I pointed out. So I think it's just kind of a sucky situation. I always hate to see talented players in situations like this. It reminds me of Le'Veon Bell a few years ago with the Steelers holding out, because then you're missing out on some of the best football you can watch. And you hate to see it. And so I really just hope something gets solved. I don't know what that will be. I don't have a solution to this. This is just kind of more of a rant more than anything, but I just really hope something happens.
Yeah, I think you did a really great job of laying out kind of what is kind of unfolded and why the situation is so gross to even kind of consider, just knowing the things that we know about Deshaun. I want to say first, like, it's incredible that the agent was able to negotiate that contract for Deshaun, right? Like, you put a lot of that on the Browns. I think it's disgusting, but props to the agent, because I never would have seen that coming. And the other thing that makes this Lamar thing and the comparison to Deshaun so puzzling to me is that the Ravens had the opportunity to extend Lamar even before that contract was signed. And so because of that, that's where I kind of just get so confused, because I don't understand why the Ravens don't want a proven quarterback in today's era, which we have talked about a lot during this episode, where the quarterback play is so integral. And what we've seen with Lamar is he's shown the ability to get better. I understand that the injuries are a concern, but to me, I just really don't understand why the Ravens seem like they don't want a guy who many other teams should want. And then even more puzzling is why these other teams also aren't picking up the phone to call about Lamar. I mean, altogether, I really don't understand kind of the league's perception of Lamar. It makes me wonder if there are, things that we don't know, the general public, things that we don't know about the Lamar situation. And I will also say, I think Lamar himself can probably handle the situation a little bit better. Obviously, he's made a big deal about wanting to represent himself, which I'm all for. But at the same time, I think it kind of undercuts his value when he's not bringing in a professional to kind of negotiate for him, as well as just kind of the way he's handled everything through the media. Obviously, he has his own production company. Obviously, we haven't heard anything on that end yet, so that's not going great. There's been a lot about the guys that he's brought in to kind of do the negotiating for him. We've seen the CBA release statements about it. Again, I don't want to put any of it on Lamar, because I think it's more of an indictment on the Ravens, but I do think Lamar could do a couple things to help him out here.
Yeah, and again, I hear what you're saying, but again, I always just hate to gang up on the little guy in this scenario. And like you said about the NFL releasing statements about that Ken guy who we made the all-in-one gym with, and they're like, do not negotiate with him. And then Lamar had to come out public and be like, hey, he was not trying to negotiate for me. You're just lying now. And as well as there's been rumors of collusion. So I just think that's kind of the hard thing is as fans, we only get so much information. And again, you brought up, well, he also doesn't negotiate with an agent. But I also understand that just as much as well. I wouldn't want someone taking a cut. I worked my whole life to make all this money, and now all of a sudden you're telling me I have to pay someone who's going to take X amount off. Like, I've always understood that. Richard Sherman famously did it. Trent Williams, the Pouncey brothers, I'm pretty sure, also negotiated their contracts on their own. And like I said, I more than understand that. And so I think you're right with Lamar could present himself better, but Lamar has always been Lamar to a T. I mean, his social media is one of the most wild things, and I love it. It's awesome. The league needs players like him. And just to kind of touch on the last point you brought up, which is you need that proven quarterback, especially in the AFC. I think you're right. And now with Mahomes winning last year with over $40 million cap hit and being almost 20-some%, that shatters the record. The highest cap hit of a quarterback had before Patrick Mahomes was around 12-13%, and it was Steve Young and Tom Brady. Now that has been shattered with almost a quarter of it being on one player. So I think that era of not being able to pay your quarterback has faded, as we've seen. I think maybe at least for the present era, until rules change or something, we may have seen the end of these sort of game managers winning it all for you, because I just think when you get to that top level, look at teams like San Fran, right? They did it. They made it all the way, but they had more of a game manager, and look what happened. He had to make a few big plays, and he couldn't against Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I just think football is changing, and I think the Ravens are stuck in their old ways.